My name is Damar Wicaksono. I come from Kebumen, Central Java. For the last 5 years, I've been living in Jakarta, working at a logistics company and chasing a simple dream, building a better life and making my parents proud. Tonight feels different. Inside this small, worn-out boarding room, I slowly pack my belongings into a backpack. I'm not packing because I want to go home. I'm packing because I have to. This morning, everything changed. Employees were called one by one into the HR office. The company said they were making major efficiency cuts. 5 years of loyalty suddenly meant nothing. Tonight, I arrived at the train station late in the evening. The atmosphere felt unusually quiet. It wasn't a holiday, so only a few passengers were walking through the dimly lit hall. The sound of distant footsteps echoed softly across the empty platform. I stood in front of the automatic ticket machine. My fingers hesitated for a moment before pressing the screen. After confirming the destination, the machine began printing my ticket to Kebumen. Suddenly, the train whistle echoed loudly across the station. The sound signaled that the train had arrived. I tightened my grip on my backpack and stepped toward the carriage, ready to begin the long journey home. After entering the train, I walked slowly through the carriage while checking the seat numbers above each row. The train was already filled with passengers returning to their hometowns. Some were chatting quietly, others were leaning back in their seats preparing to sleep. The soft hum of the train engine filled the air as it prepared to depart. Finally, I found my seat by the window. I placed my bag above the rack and sat down, staring outside into the dark night. A few hours passed as the train continued its journey through the darkness. The rhythmic sound of the wheels against the tracks almost made me sleepy, but soon my stomach began to growl. I realized I hadn't eaten anything since afternoon. I stood up from my seat and began walking slowly along the narrow corridor between the seats while the train gently swayed from side to side. Following the faint smell of food drifting through the train, I eventually reached the dining carriage. Warm lights illuminated the small restaurant area inside the train. A few passengers were sitting there, quietly enjoying their meals while the train continued speeding through the night. The smell of fried rice, soup, and hot tea filled the air, making my hunger even stronger. I approached the small kitchen counter and asked the cook, "Do you have fried rice?" The chef nodded and immediately began preparing it. Oil crackled loudly as garlic and spices hit the hot pan. The smell was comforting, almost enough to make me forget the stressful day I had just gone through. For a moment, the train felt peaceful again. The violent shock suddenly threw me onto the floor. My head spun for a moment as I tried to understand what had just happened. Around me, passengers were shouting in confusion while objects continued sliding across the floor. I pushed myself up slowly, my heart pounding hard inside my chest. Something was terribly wrong with this train. Curiosity mixed with fear pushed me forward. I began walking toward the next carriage, trying to see what had caused such a powerful impact. The corridor felt darker than before, and the sounds of panic echoed behind me. Each step felt heavier than the last as the train continued rushing forward through the night. Then I saw something that made my entire body freeze. The metal wall of the carriage had been deeply torn open by enormous claw marks. The steel looked like it had been scratched by something unbelievably powerful. The marks were huge, far too large to belong to any normal animal. The shape of those claw marks reminded me of something I had only seen in movies and documentaries. They looked exactly like the claws of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. But that was impossible. Dinosaurs had been extinct for millions of years. Yet somehow, those terrifying marks were right in front of me. When I stepped into the next carriage, the destruction was even worse. Seats were overturned, luggage was scattered everywhere, and shattered glass covered the floor. In the middle of the chaos, I saw a young woman trapped beneath a fallen seat. She was trying to push it away but couldn't move. Her face was filled with fear as she struggled to escape from the wreckage. I rushed forward to help her, pushing the heavy seat aside with all my strength. But just as I reached out to pull her up, something suddenly moved outside the broken window. In the next second, a small raptor leaped into the carriage, landing heavily on the floor. Its claws scraped against the metal as its cold eyes locked onto us. The sudden sight shocked me so badly that I stumbled backward and fell onto the floor. My mind struggled to accept what I was seeing. A real dinosaur stood only a few meters away from us. The young woman froze in fear beside me, unable to move as the creature slowly stepped closer. In panic, my eyes searched the carriage for anything I could use as a weapon. That was when I noticed a red emergency axe mounted on the wall of the train. Without hesitation, I grabbed it tightly. The raptor lowered its body, preparing to attack, its sharp teeth glinting under the flickering train lights.
Let's do this!
The raptor suddenly lunged forward with terrifying speed, its claws scraping loudly against the metal floor as it rushed toward us. Instinct took over before I could even think. I gripped the axe with both hands and swung it with all my strength. The blade struck the creature with a heavy impact. The raptor screeched wildly, thrashing for a moment before its body finally collapsed onto the floor.
Let's do this!
Without wasting time, I helped the young woman to her feet and pulled her toward the previous carriage. The train was still racing through the night, shaking violently as we ran through the narrow corridor. But just as we reached the carriage with the giant claw marks, two raptors suddenly appeared ahead of us, blocking the way. They hissed and lowered their bodies, ready to attack. "Calm down," I whispered, trying to steady my breath as the young woman trembled beside me. "We're going to get through this." My voice sounded more confident than I actually felt. The two raptors were still watching us, their eyes glowing in the dim train lights. For a moment, everything felt strangely still, until suddenly a massive impact slammed into the front of the train. When we finally realized it, the two raptors had disappeared into the darkness. The carriage in front of us was already torn in half, its metal twisted like shattered paper. For a moment, the night fell eerily silent. Then, from the distance, something massive began charging toward the train. Heavy footsteps shook the wreckage until a colossal T-Rex emerged from the darkness, rising behind the broken carriage, its giant head towering into the night sky. Suddenly, everything went completely dark. The roaring wind, the shaking train, and the terrifying shadow of the T-Rex vanished into blackness. Maybe the train had just entered a tunnel, or maybe something worse had happened. My head spun as the world faded away. The last thing I remember was the sound of metal screaming before I finally lost consciousness. If you enjoyed this dinosaur story and want to see what happens next, don't forget to like and subscribe, and make sure to leave a comment below. Your support helps this channel grow and makes the next adventure even better.